Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about Africa and its independence and decolonization from Western powers. So we all know that Africa has been under the influence of British control for the past couple of centuries, 19th, 20th century.
However, the neglectance of civilians and the authoritarian control resulted in very classical riots and very unhappy faces. People of Africa blamed the colonial economy for the legacy of colonialism. With the emergence of African leaders such as Nkrumah and Kenyatta, the separatist movements fueled the nationalism for their independence in order to come to where we're at today.
Ever since the Western powers had complete control over the continent in the scramble for Africa, the race for colonization had little regards to ethnicity or religious tradition. The Berlin Agreement in 1885 allowed a majority of African Americans a loss of sovereignty and their natural resources being dominated by the Europeans. The Europeans used aggression, diplomatic pressure, military forces, and eventual conquest to take over the region. Thanks Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Portugal, and Spain for destroying our country.
Major problems arose, such as social displacement, poverty, unemployment, inferiority, and the lack of appreciation. Empirical policies led to local economies being drowned in cheap labor and the urbanization of the minority. This includes primarily Britain and France as the powerhouse for colonization. With the introduction of World War I and World War II, African soldiers were transcribed into empirical militaries.
As promised during the 1941 Atlantic Conference, they were promised redemption and self-determination. And the Europeans really ticked them off when they declined the Atlantic Charter, which will allow for the autonomy of empirical colonies. And the few of elite Africans that was educated in Western cultivation used their minds, their ideas of self-righteousness to get to the end, to fight and achieve independence. And coming together with the attention of decolonization and the afflicting emotions, it forced the Fifth Pan-African Congress to demand the end of colonization in 1945. Let's start with the first African country to gain their independence, Ghana. Oh, the land of gold, or we most notably known as the Gold Coast, was literally a gold mine for the European colonizers, until a native politician and revolutionist led the way to Pan-Africanism, or as we know him as Kwame Nkrumah, having founded the true political party to the colonies, known as the United Gold Coast Convention. They needed someone to run it. So they got my boy Nkrumah. However, the thing didn't work out so well. He got imprisoned for a year until upon release he saw the UGCC wasn't working out. So he decided to make the Convention People's Party to, I quote, carry the masses with them. It was meant to fill in the holes made by the UGCC. And with that, in 1949, Nkrumah, along with many farmers and workers, organized a strike and a mass movement to revolt for independence. Of May 1956, Nkrumah issued a white paper of proposals that would be supported later within 3 months by the Gold Coast Assembly. Eventually, the CPP was able to win the majority of the votes within the election of 1956, gaining 71 out of 104 seats. Gaining political control, by March 6 the following year, Ghana became the first independent country of Africa. Nkrumah would later form the Organization of African Unity, which would later become the African Union in support to cooperation and standards such as the EU in hopes of the unification of the African countries.
Moving on to Kenya.
It was home to large populations of Asians as well as Africans due to the trade in the Indian Ocean. The middle class consisted of mainly merchants and professionals or educated individuals as well. Kenya is formerly ruled by Britain until a group called Mau Mau.
Mau Mau, Kenya.
Yes, a group called Meow Meow protest against the economic conditions in the British rule. And then a civil war broke out, and after 8 years of warfare, Kenya finally gained its independence in 1963, with its first president being Jomo Kenyatta.
Kenyatta.
Progress was slowed by differences between Kikuyu, Kuya, and Luo tribe. Britain imported 35,000 Indian workers to build the Mombasa, the Kumbu Railway from 1886 to 1901, and this, with the large amount of Asians, created tension within Kenya. Having one political party known as the Kenyan African National Union, or the KANU. Sadly, Kenyatta died in 1978, and Vice President Daniel Moi took power.
While he ruled, corruption grew, and the national monetary funds threatened to withdraw all their funds within Kenya. Violence between tribes were very common, especially during elections. A coalition government was formed, bringing some peace, but attacks between Indians and Asians are still happening up to today. And finally, South Africa.
Being one of the last countries to gain independence in Africa, it was internally controlled by the Dutch National Party. They gained control during the 1960 election after gaining independence from Britain.
They promoted social Darwinism and white minority to pass laws in order to create a system of apartheid.
Extreme segregation and racism led to riots and social tension within the community. The National Party was forced to build a strong military in order to keep their rule as a minority. However, protest leaders such as Nelson Mandela and Steve Biko were fighting for independence, even after being sentenced to life in prison, some dying in custody. Guerrilla resistance began in the 1960s when a state of emergency was declared in the 1980s, with social reforms led by F.W. de Klerk giving the South American people more control. The 1994 election brought the African National Congress Party to power along with Nelson Mandela. Nelson became the first South African black president, proving himself to be an amazing leader, causing the Dutch National Party to surrender all power peacefully. However, white supremacy and conflicts between tribes are still a problem as of today. In South Africa developed a strong pluralistic democracy to help the people fight and gain independence. Celebrating their Freedom Day on April 27, 1994. I think it's time for the open letter.
Let's see what's in the box, shall we? Dear Britain, roses are red, violets are blue. You colonized Africa, and now they hate you. You used them for trade, and you took everything. And now that you're done, you can hear them declaring, you have no use for them now, so take your bow and bid them goodbye and go off and cry. Because what once was a great country, land far and wide, now sits in the bums and go offs and hides. So go and drink your tea and obsess over Prince Harry, and to run the country that was once legendary. Best wishes, Sydney and Ashtin.
Africa certainly had its fair share of success in the late 20th century, but is it still doing well today? One could say, unless you're looking at a country like Kenya. Last year in 2017, Kenya had one of the most politically and socially draining presidential elections of its history. What started as a race between candidates Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta turned into an election nullification that would delay the presidential selection for 2 months. This was due to the fact that Kenyatta won with 54% of the vote and Odinga called the good old corruption card, resulting in lots of mass violence as can be seen in Nairobi, Kenya, which was sprawled in blood the day of the election because people were not only using their fists, but firing weapons as well to protest not only the government but the opposing party. However, this ultimately did still lead to the victory of Kenyatta when he won 98% of the vote and when the Supreme Court ruled that Mr. Odinga's claims didn't have any merit. However, this did still lead to quite a few people becoming upset and voicing their opinion. Though Africa's problems don't just stop there. South Africa's Cape Town surprisingly surprised the world with Day Zero. What was supposed to be a day in August of 2017 where Cape Town, South Africa would completely run out of water was a simple miscalculation. The day has been pushed to in 2018. However, there still are a lot of regulations in Cape Town as each civilian is only allotted 50 liters of water per day. This is due to a century-long drought that was probably inevitable and we are starting to see the effects of now today. Other than these two extremes, Africa's actually doing pretty well, besides the radicalists overrunning some parts of the nation. But, that's another video. Till next time, my name is Brielle Mitchell, and just like the continent of Africa,